Welcome to the Easeful Uplevel, where we talk all things conscious entrepreneurship, spirituality, and upleveling without stress. Together, Erin Tobias, our marketing expert, meets with Allison Borstad, our mindset expert, where we just get into the nitty gritty of what it means to figure out who you are, what your purpose is, and what your next steps are. Our goal is to make it as effortless and easeful as possible, even when you're going through hard times. Our goal is to get our mindsets right and get our energy right so that we feel like we can attack anything, we can accomplish anything. Consider this your energetic upgrade of the day. We hope you love this episode. Here we go.
Oh, hey, wow.
Hello.
Looking beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I love that. I was like going to be on time. And then you're like, hold on, give me 10 more minutes. And I was like, cool. 10 minutes. I can do 1,000 projects in the next 10 minutes. And then now I'm 15 minutes late. So anyways.
I don't care. That's fine. I needed 15 minutes. First of all, I love your hair. I feel like you did it differently today.
I did. This is like day 3 of curling it.
It's a vibe.
I know. Like, all I have to do is like do it once and then it like stays nice for like several days.
It's nice. I like how it's like a little swoop here and then it falls down. I mean, it's gorgeous.
I curled it with the straightener. That's the trick.
Oh.
Like, I don't curl with a curling wand or whatever. I do it with the straightener.
And it does girl, this, like, you gotta teach me that whenever.
Oh, I will. We could have a podcast lesson today on curling your hair with a hair straightener.
Everyone, turn on YouTube. That's how we get people on YouTube.
Right? I know. We could just be here like doing our hair, talking shit. I mean, that might be a fun thing.
Honestly. Also, I want to do more stuff like that.
I'm in the brand colors today.
I see. You want to do some promos?
Right? Today. Also, while we're just doing show and tell, let's see if this makes it anywhere. Can we have a moment for these shoes?
Allison's a whole vibe today. Yes, those shoes are awesome. Those are like 5th grade Allison. That's retro right there.
Haven't I always wanted a pair like this?
Yes.
Like they're blue, although like the men's ones are better, so I got the men's ones. But this color, I was like, blue suede. I was like,
I always do it up for the men's, but for the
I
women's,
know. I want this in the women's, and it didn't exist. So I did the calculations. I was like, what would make this a women's size? 9.5. So, anyways,
there you go. So Allison has blue. What are those? Adidas? Pumas?
Yeah, it's like the Adidas like Sambas. I don't know, the classic, like bringing back the classic 80s Beat Boy.
I like it. I was thinking today we could talk about our what I'm calling the energy protection protocol day, because I feel like we're both having one of those.
Yes,
and
please.
I don't think it's like I've never actually broken down this process so formally, but today it just came to me.
I also love this, the energy protection protocol. I love this so much.
I have like a planned one and then an SOS one because well, the thing I learned from, of course, our years of working together is how important it is to protect energy. And that's something I don't think that like I ever was cognizant of. I was just like, why am I sitting here feeling all burnt out all the time? And it's like, well, because I had probably a 20-year cycle of burning, like getting to this point.
Yeah.
And after you kind of helped me rehab from that, which honestly I think took about 2 years. I mean, I started feeling better right away. Like after, I mean, I'm not going to say I wasn't feeling better after like only a few sessions. I think after 3 sessions, I felt a lot better. Yeah. But then it became about like, okay, now that you're feeling better, how do we avoid this happening again? And so that's a journey I've been on.
Because you say like, 2 years of working with you, but it's so funny because I feel like we probably only spent like 3 or 4 sessions on this.
Yes.
Like spaced out, right? And then you were just like activating it right away and you're like, oh, this is nice.
I know, but I'm a perfectionist. So that's part of my problem. But I was like, I'm determined.
People out there, it doesn't take well, I mean, healing takes, it's an ever deepening journey. But it is crazy though, like actually how quickly, like once you have a protocol, like you said, the energy protection protocol, like and kind of know what you I don't like the word should be doing, but what you could be doing to feel better, I guess. Yeah. And then once you try it and you realize how good it feels, you're like, oh, never mind. I'm never doing what I used to do.
Yes. So I schedule them in. So I have a routine that I've created that's like SOS. It's not scheduled into my calendar, but wow, this was a rough week and I need to love on myself. And so what that looks like for me is usually I'll try to schedule or reschedule any meetings that I have. So that's like the first thing I go to.
Mhm.
And part of my work with Allison was to make it okay to do that. Like, make it okay to actually say, hey, I'm feeling burnt out and I need to reschedule some things, because there's definitely a barrier in terms of people pleasing that comes up when you reschedule and redo deadlines.
Yeah.
The other thing is, in that moment, I will usually go to a meditation or get outside, and then I'll schedule like a yoga class or something like that. So that's like my emergency moment. And then after I do all that, I'll like reassess how I am and probably try and take it easy for like a few extra days.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything like that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think purposeful slacking which is like so hard for high achievers, perfectionists, like very ambitious driven people. It's kind of like, yeah. Or even I think it's hard too because ideally we don't want to be like flaky people, right? You know, if you're like I want my word to mean something, I don't want to flake out on people, which like yes, but I think some of this has to be like cultivated. I think there are moments where I'm like I'm grouchy. Especially for certain things that are like maybe social, like after work, because there's some essential things that at times are harder to cancel on. You can cancel on anything, truly, anytime. But, you know, like sometimes we triage, right? Of like, listen, I'm feeling half energy today, so I'm doing half the crap today, right? And so I'm going to prioritize this and this, and then the rest is going. And I do think, like, especially when it comes to certain social things where I'm like, if I deeply don't want to go and I'm going somewhere with the energy of not wanting to be there, I'm doing no one any favors. So even if I'm following through on a commitment to be here in my like weird low energy, to me that's just like, you know, even if I was doing it thinking I'm benefiting the other person, I'm like I don't know how much I'm really benefiting them. So I do like to, like you said, cut back on things, or if I have like in my current schedule, I do like to have these kind of chunks of time for various things. Sometimes they're like creative projects, sometimes they're catching up on various things. And I like to use those as flex kind of things too, in terms of I'm just doing nothing. I'm just resting, right? I was going to do work on this project or whatever, like things that are, I guess, semi optional. I definitely will be like permission to be very non productive today, right? To rest up. But it's interesting, like, yeah, in terms of the SOS kind of stuff. I mean, some of that's just intuitive of like what you feel like you need, you know? Because yeah, burnout, it's interesting because sometimes it's just like I need to not talk to a human at all today, and then other times it's like I actually need to talk to this type of a human today. Like I'm scheduling, you
Yeah.
know, an emergency session with my coach or I'm checking in with my communities that are really supportive or something, you know. So it's interesting. But yeah, there's in terms of my SOS thing. So it's funny because I like to do when I'm really feeling it is usually when I actually remember to do things like smoke cleansing, like smudging, and you know,
Oh, that's
um,
fun.
yeah, like spiritual practice kind of things. Or I really like the chant. I call back my energy from people, places, things, and entities that have taken it without my consent. My energy is my own, and I own it. So there's like saying things like that too. Can especially if I'm overthinking, or if there's just been some kind of funky drama or something going on, you know, where I don't know, every time you get that evil eye energy where you're like, so and so's talking about me, I just know it. Either, or maybe it's trolls online commenting on your stuff, and so you know, or just every so often you're like, or you had to set a boundary with someone and they didn't like it. You know they're talking shit about you behind your back because they're mad. They have to go process their feelings with someone else. Good, go do it somewhere else. But yeah, every so often, like when that stuff I feel like is energetically pulling me, I feel like I have to do some of that kind of stuff of like just rebubbling myself a little bit, like
Yeah,
energetically.
the calling back your energy, that's an interesting one. I'm actually looking for not just like chants or meditations that I can do or cord cutting ceremonies. So I'm actually looking for more. So I will report back once I learn some other protocols, because there's certain energy that is just so strong that type of stuff like doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah, it's like sticky.
Yeah, I
Like,
had one kind of clinger on, and I just had a massage, and I feel like that clinger on is finally gone. And so that was helpful to me. So I'm not sure if it was like just the release of, getting kind of those toxins and things like that out of my body that was really helpful. But I'm interested to maybe talk to, I think I'm going to actually tap into my soul reading group to see what they do, because there's a lot of women in that group who are super experienced. That's Nikki Novo's group that she hosts every year, teaching about intuition. But I'm interested to know, like, if there's anything a little bit more potent that's possible, because every now and then it's like one specific energy clings on, and they cling on hard. But so it's interesting. It's those types of experiences can be a little bit difficult to navigate.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting because I think the really heavy ones, I mean, even if you think about, depending on what people are going through, like I was supporting someone earlier this week who was going through a breakup, right? So, and we're like the one that was going to have the conversation to say, I think this isn't working. And it was like very high, and this is a highly sensitive, people pleasing type person that, it was really hard to have that conversation and to shake the feeling of like, I know that this is right, but the feelings of guilt or the feelings of worry or all the other things, right, that can come with that. And I think there's just some things, especially if it's, people really close to us that we're setting boundaries with, or we're dealing with trauma or whatever. I don't know if there's any like golden bullet. I do actually think it's like the combination of all the things. And sometimes I do think it takes like some things I feel like you can clear in a day or so, or in an hour if it's just a light one. And then there's other things I think that can take a week or two to work themselves out. But I even think about like the mind, body, spirit approach of like, I need to go move my body and sweat. Right? I need to go to yoga. I need to get it out of my body. Right? Or I need to go dance around in the kitchen, or, like there's something to like moving it out of your body. Right? And then the mindset piece, what am I thinking about this? What am I assuming? Is there any old stories I'm holding on to that are hurting my feelings for no reason that I need to like let go of or look at? And then the spiritual piece too of like that's where you were talking about the cord cutting or the smudging or whatever, of like this energetic release. And I think like you often need a combination of all three, and then maybe I'd add a fourth, which is loving connection with another healthy, healing person.
I love that. Allison, right? Beautiful. Yes, I love that. I love you bringing us back to that mind, body, spirit framework and adding on a bonus, loving connection.
Community.
This is definitely that magical method that you're so great about teaching others.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. I think some of the stuff is so unique too to each person. Like I'm also, even from the physical standpoint, I'm such a water baby that I have to get in water. Like water submersion for me, if I've really like been around someone with really heavy energy, or even holding space for people who are just going through it like that, I'm happy to be there, but I'm also like, oof, that was heavy. Like you had a release, but I think I absorbed some of it, right? So like there's something about, I mean, for a long time I had a hot tub, manifesting another one, now that I've moved, which, I honestly was like, this needs to be like either a health write-off or a business write-off, because truly, like I would go in it like 2 to 3 times a day sometimes, just as like, and I just would feel different after I'd get out. Like I would feel cleansed. And it's really interesting because, a lot of the world's major religions have this whole like full submersion in terms of like purification, like spiritually, it's just really interesting. I think there's
baptism and things like that.
Baptism. I know in the Jewish tradition, there's like monthly ritual baths, and like it's just there's various things, right, that like purify you. So from a spiritual or energetic perspective. So, but it also just might depend on the person of like, maybe it's because I'm also like a fire sign, Aries. And I also have a bit of like, if you're going to Ayurveda, like Pitta, which is like a very fire energy. So I find water to be very soothing. So some of it too could just be like,
Allison's all fire over there.
And I got red hair. I mean, it's just like the amount of fire in all of my stuff is just like, yeah. So
you have like a physical manifestation of your internal signs.
Too much fire today. I need some water. No, but truly, like, so I think that's kind of an interesting thing. One more thing I want to say real quick, and then I think we could even get deeper into this too, is I think even as like from a prevention thing, the thing I also had like a heavy interaction this week of something where I was like, oof, like, with someone close to me disclosing something I didn't really want to know or, want to hear. And it's interesting, I think, if you have people pleasing tendencies or like empath abilities, that some of it might just be part of your nature, but the other part was growing up, you had to be hyper attuned to your environment, right? You got really good at reading people, even made a practice of attempting to read minds, which was a big thing for me. It was like, and sometimes I'm successful ish because I'm that empathetic, and I can feel people's energy that I'm like, sometimes I get pretty close, but it's not always 100% accurate too. Sometimes I'm actually wildly off or I'm misinterpreting other people's cues. But the temptation for me to try to jump into other people's brains, and it used to be something I'd actively try to do. Now I actively try not to do it.
Yeah.
Right? To try to figure
totally
out what they're thinking. Yeah, and to try to not change what they're thinking or feeling responsible for all of that. Like that was something where I had to like put myself back in my own lane for a second because I was like, so and so shared this upsetting thing with me. What should I do? They dropped a little bomb on me. What do I do? What do I do for them with this? And I'm like, I don't know that I actually. They're an adult. They didn't ask me to do anything. They just told me something. They didn't ask me for advice. They didn't ask me to talk to the other person involved. They didn't ask so what, why am I involving myself? Or feeling responsible. So I think some of that kind of stuff too, in terms of like energetic stretching of like worrying about other people or like volunteering for things that people didn't ask you for.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, or like being a caretaker, trying to be a savior role too. I mean, that's the thing that has been a journey for me for a long time, is to like stay in my own damn lane. And some things are not my business, even for people who are really close to me or they're sharing something with me. It's still not really my business to dabble deeper, especially if they're not asking me to.
I have a rule for myself now, is that I take everything at face value. If you tell me that you're feeling a certain type of way, or that you had an experience, or you have a desire, or you have a boundary, I don't look any deeper into that. I don't think about, is it the best thing for you? I don't think about how are you going to feel when you do that thing that you really want to do. I don't involve myself at all. I just say, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take whatever the next step is based off of what they told me without going any deeper than that. And I act accordingly. And a lot of what I realized whenever I was trying to do that thing where you read someone's mind or you think, is this the right thing for them, such and so forth, is it was like risk mitigation, like protection for myself and for them. And I realized that that was harming a lot of the natural process that could take place for that person. So it's taking away perhaps opportunities or lessons that could be happening as a result of them following through on those things that they want to do. And yeah, like you said, it's like, it's not any of my business. So I don't need to waste my energy trying to figure out what they could be thinking, even though they're telling me they're thinking X.
Yeah. Yeah, well, truly.
So,
or even just like worrying about people. I mean, I think this is a common thing too with like family members, especially. We love to worry about each other. And it's just like, and or I think sometimes like control each other's behavior too.
And a lot of times it's like, oh, you're not showing love if you're not worrying about someone, is kind of the common occurrence, especially in that mother-daughter, even grandmother, granddaughter relationship. A lot of times it's the women who feel that they need to worry about you or worry about something in order to show that they care.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's almost superstitious too, of like, if you have an anxiety, you want to do something with it. And I've even talked to some of my like former therapy clients who were like, yeah, I almost feel like if I don't worry about it, something bad's going to happen. And if I do worry about it, there is a little bit of magical thinking. And listen, I'm a fan of magical thinking as long as it's healing. Which I would rather like think, if I'm worrying about something, this is actually a technique I used with some folks who just tend to worry and their brain needs something to do. Is I'm like, if I could convert this worry or this, what should I do? Or how do I convince so-and-so to go to the doctor or something? Like sometimes people are like, I told them what, like, cause I think as family members, we influence each other or friends or whatever. I think there are some times where it is within our lane to be like, you know what? Have you considered this? Not saying you should go do this, but have you, like, I have a little bit of information. It could be helpful for you. Would you like to hear it? Right. They also could say, no, I don't want to hear this from you. But short of that, if you've already shared information, like sometimes like family members, like, have you gone yet? Have you gone yet? Are you doing that? And it's like this really interesting dynamic that's like really not healthy. First of all, if you're requiring someone to like badger you into doing something, like that's a weird dynamic, first of all. And if you're the one doing the badgering, all of that is like a weird, disempowered, like what is going on? Especially amongst adults. That's the thing that like is really interesting too, is when there's like this like push-pull kind of thing versus like, I respect you enough for you to make your own choices for your life, including the wrong ones. Maybe I'm going to think that you're making the wrong choice. And I'm going to be like, but you're an adult and maybe you actually need to make the what I think is quote unquote wrong. Maybe it was the right one for you. Or maybe you need to make this choice because that's a necessary step on your path to get to the next place that you're supposed to be. Like, we don't know, right?
Totally.
Like,
and if you're telling me you're feeling a certain type of way, then I'm not going to disrespect you by telling you actually you're feeling this type of way and I see it. It's like, okay, great. Thank you for expressing your feelings towards me. Now let me act in accordance with what you're expressing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so I think then it's interesting, like when we get to the point of, okay, I'm going to stay in my own lane now. But if you still have that like worry or anxiety, it's funny because I've actually worked with a handful of clients who are like mothers in their 50s and 60s. They've got adult children who are like navigating dating or marriage or parenting or all these things where they're like, I have so many opinions that I want to share, but I'm trying not to be that mom, which I'm like, oh, I love that this is the journey you're on.
I love that they have that self-awareness to kind of want their kid to have their own experience.
Oh, 100%. Well, and it's funny too, because some of them are like, oh my gosh, my mom was so heavy-handed with me. And so I don't, and I resented her for it, or I lacked connection with her because of it. I avoided her because she was so heavy-handed with her opinions. And so I want the connection with my kids and I want to be the, the resource or whatever, but not overstepping. Like, I think these are healthy ways, especially again, with family, like we're always a little bit interdependent, which I think is healthy to a certain extent, right? And that's what you want, is like the healthy, like mutual support, not the enmeshment. But one of the things that I worked on, I'm just thinking of one client in particular who loved this, was like taking, the anxious energy, the worrying energy, into like turning it into like a love bomb energetically, like, and kind of like a prayer, basically. Of like, I'm going to take this and I'm imagining that I'm like creating this ball of just love and healing and support. And I'm just going to like pitch it in their direction and hope and just imagine it hitting them. Just love. And if I want to do that even in an intangible way, instead of like saying, have you gone to the doctor or whatever it is, it could just be like, love you. Right? That's it. Here's a funny meme.
I love that.
So just like finding other ways to send energy. And again, I think that's the whole thing too when it comes to like, the concept of prayer, right? Like various people will argue whether or not prayer works or not, right? Whether they're religious or faithful or not or whatever. But I do think even at the very least, the way that it transforms us and the way that we interact with each other to be more healthy, of like, let me just send good energy to you and focus my worry or my anxiety into actually like transmuting that or alchemizing that fear thing. Yes. You just like reframe it into love, right?
Which is different though than, I mean, that's like a nice subtle energy. It's wishing someone well. It's taking that, like you were saying, that anxious energy and transmuting it into something useful. It is not the love bombing, which happens a lot with narcissists, which is like,
I was gonna say,
they send you flowers, they send you gifts, they send you like all these texts and telling you how amazing they are. That's not
that's true. I don't want to call it a love bomb. I meant to say love ball, an energetic ball of love, not the bomb. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, because that is a whole other thing of like where you're, you were overwhelming. Yes, no. I'm so glad you said that because I was like, it's not.
Because we might be tempted to do that too, as like highly empathetic, caring people who are in a state of worry. We also might be whether, I don't think that in that case the person's a narcissist, but they might be thinking of overcompensating and sending them all the love. And I honestly think I can look back at sometimes when I have done that, like, man, let me just back off of this person and let them have their experience. I actually have a really interesting experience that happened with a friend of mine, and he asked me for advice on what he should do and what I thought in regard to like a family dynamic. And I said, well, ultimately it's up to you, and you need to honor your own energy. But if you do this action that you told me that you're interested in doing, this is how I see the scenario playing out. Are you up for that? Knowing that that might be the case. And if so, then you have to be okay with that result. And it was interesting because they chose to still do the action, even though it might result in a negative experience or something that could be perceived as negative or conflict, and go through that conflict anyways to hopefully get out on the other side. And so that was an interesting scenario where it's like, actually, I was asked for my opinion. I did give it. In a normal situation, like, past Erin, healing Erin would have just come out with that advice anyways and not have been asked. She just would have overshared and over advised even when she's not being asked. So I was very proud of that moment that someone came to me, asked, and I shared, but I also still left it up to them.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something really beautiful too about doing that. And it's funny too, because it's like, again, in some of my coaching roles or depending on whom I'm working with, like pure coaching is supposed to be just like leading someone back to themselves, right? And you not providing any advice. I do a little bit of like mentorship and teaching and other things in there too. And I always do kind of have that caveat too, or even when it comes to relationship stuff. This is an interesting topic now that we've gotten onto the love bombing of people who are in a relationship where they know it's not right, but their heart isn't done. Like, you know what I mean? And so and they'll ask me advice, or they'll even reflect really healthy things. And it's the mismatch. And this doesn't just apply to relationships. I think this happens other times too, where intellectually you're on a level, but it hasn't integrated through your body and your heart yet. And you like can feel the difference. And you also know that your heart usually wins. / your body or your fear or whatever. Like there's a certain point where like that stuff is just truly more powerful than your intellect. And in fact, when you're emotionally triggered, it's absolutely going to override your intellect. And so it is interesting to like how like allowing people space and grace to be a little bit messy in their well, I was gonna say their spiritual journey, but also like their healing journey of growing an awareness of things that aren't healthy for you or that you don't want, and still engaging in them a little bit anyways. And just in having a curious awareness about them without being like, oh, I'm doing the thing again. It's just like, that's interesting. I'm still doing it. What's that about? Right. I think that's just like a gentler way to go about like behavior change. And then usually when people kind of allow space for that, it's almost easier for them to come to like healthier conclusions, I think, versus like that I shouldn't be doing this, which then actually like our little rebel parts of our brains are like, oh, naughty. I want it more. Like even like things like overeating or drinking or I don't know. There's like all sorts of things, right? That sometimes if we put it off limits, it's like so much sexier all of a sudden. Versus just being like, all right, I'm up to something, but I can't quite fully break the pattern. And I'm gonna hold space for me to be imperfect while I'm like figuring this out, which is really interesting.
It is. It is interesting. Wow, we went on a topic.
I was gonna say
we went on a topic binge there.
Yes. I know.
I'll start with SOS protocol. I mean, it kind of brings us full circle though, because my SOS protocol actually started with a little bit of binge eating.
Yeah.
I was just so tired. I was like, I just want to eat this bag of chips. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not normal. I'm going to let myself have this bag of chips, but I also need to know that I'm tired.
Dude, I literally do something about this. I literally had that interaction with someone, and then literally it was like 11 p.m. I was like, why am I still awake? Because I'm still thinking about this thing, right? I should be doing all these other I was also in a bag of chips. What in the world? Well, although this is a thing, though, it's actually really funny. Like, just to speak to the bag of chips thing, it is actually a really long term it is not the healthiest habit. I mean, you could do a lot worse. First of all, you could do a lot worse, but there is something sensory, like it's grounding actually, like the
Mm-hmm.
crunchy. There's like all of these things that are sensory experience that like bring you into your body and like a positive sensory way. Now, again, depending on how much you're eating and how you're feeling afterwards, may or may not be the
Yeah, I
best
had a
choice.
stomach
But
ache afterwards, but
I did too. I was like, oh,
I enjoyed that stomach ache. I said it's exactly what I needed.
yeah, yeah. But it is interesting too because I used to be like, I don't stress eat. I don't think that's a thing. And but there's certain things that like I'll also realize that I'm processing them as I'm eating. Like I'm kind of ruminating as I'm eating, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'm absolutely self-soothing right now
Yeah,
with
I'll
like
set the scene for everyone. I was sitting in my garage with a bag of chips in my car because I was too exhausted to get up out of the car and walk inside. So I
there's
just
no
sat
wheel for
there.
this. Felt.
I just sat there and felt my feelings for about 20 minutes and ate some chips, and it was great. And hopefully that's not my everyday experience, but
What was the chip of
in the
choice?
moment. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. I was just eating blue corn tortilla chips, so could have been like Funyuns or
See,
spicy hot Cheetos,
I
flaming
had the
hot.
blue. I had the blue Doritos. We weren't far off. Look at you and
Ooh,
me.
the blue Doritos. Those are so good. Those are
Well, I guess
good.
the Doritos aren't blue. Blue bag.
Blue
Oh
bag
my,
Doritos. Cool
so
Ranch.
funny. This is why you and I we have synchronicitous like experience every week. We're like we have the same experience and like different flavors of the same thing this
I
week.
know what is going on. It's this universe. I mean, it's interesting. So, yes, that prompted me to go into my emergency protocol, which was like take it easy, cancel meetings. I actually
Mm-hmm.
couldn't cancel a lot of meetings. So I gutted through it,
Mm-hmm.
got on
Yeah.
the other side of it. And then, yeah, it wasn't my favorite experience. And then on Saturday afternoon, after I finished work, I just was like, okay, here we go. I'm going to enjoy the heck out of this weekend. And I was like in the moment. I took a nap, hung out with my husband, was able to like go outside and take a walk. Like we just were like, let's make this an intentional, 48 hours that we have. It wasn't even 48, it was 36. But let's make this as intentional as possible. And that was really helpful too, to just tell my husband that I was having a moment of burnout and also to ask him to actively participate in that rejuvenation. I think he was feeling a little bit burnout too. But it was nice at the end of the weekend. We said, like, how was it? Let's check in. Do we feel more energetic than when we started our weekend? And yes, we did. So that was I think that was a win for us too, because normally I would just be like resentful and still doing the chores all quiet on my own. And he would probably be wondering, like, why is she in a bad mood? So
Yeah. Well, it is interesting too. I find every so often like the power of even a half day of like deep self-care, because I've had those like the deep SOS moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so burnt out. And sometimes the stuff like can there's like just some seasons that are just crazy. They're moving so fast that you like almost don't even realize you're getting off kilter until you're really off kilter. So this tends to happen to me like if my kids are really sick, and then there's one like if it's like one of those things where it's like boom, 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 like five things after the other, right? Where you're kind of in survival mode, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I am depleted, like with a capital D, and I need to do something about it. But it's interesting. I've had like moments of like, I'm headed for a nervous breakdown. I'm about to lose my shit. I am about like, no, truly, where I'm like, I
yeah,
am
no,
about
it's
to whatever.
true.
And then I will literally be like, cancel whatever I had if I had anything, or just like, I'm going to disappear off the mat. I'm shutting off my phone. My husband knows where I am, but otherwise I'm shutting off my phone. I'm gonna go get a massage. I usually have a handful of things that I do, and like yoga, massage, um, window shopping, something that's just like truly non-productive, right? Like various things of like walking around or going on a hike or all these things. And sometimes it's really interesting how I will be like, I am a woman on the edge right now, and then literally like 6 hours later, be like, I'm great. Like
Back,
we're
baby. She's back.
yeah, truly, we're like whatever needed to work itself out, or just like giving yourself even sometimes just like an hour or two, even sometimes a really good yoga class will take me energetically from a 20 to an 80. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That wasn't just physical fatigue, it was also like emotional and spiritual fatigue as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes you like need to get that spark back where you're just like, blah, life, what is this? And then you do something that like reignites your soul and you're like, oh, wait, it's just really interesting.
So I've actually now built in energy protection protocol days as a regular monthly occurrence. And I actually think of them as kind of weeks for myself. So usually it's like the last week of the month, I try to build in some of this protection time. And so I have actually scheduled all of my massages for the year, Sunday nights, the last Sunday of the month.
Oh,
I
nice.
have someone who actually comes to my house, which is very nice. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to be in anyone's space. She's coming to me. And then that is something that I did proactively this year that I've actually never done before. It feels very indulgent.
It's giving CEO, it's giving bougie bish, it's giving luxuriate.
I'm luxuriating. I am luxuriating. And this woman is amazing. Like, she is so good with understanding the body, to the point where she like was working on my husband. She asked him, "Have you been sleeping?" And he goes, "No, not that well." And she goes, "I can tell."
Yeah.
She was like, "Hopefully you can sleep tonight, because I can tell in your body how it feels." It's fascinating. So every time I work with her, I'm like, wow, these emotions so much manifest in the body. And it's really interesting how someone else, once they get in there, can see what's going on. So that's fascinating. So I've scheduled those out. Those kick off kind of my energy protection protocol week. And also that aligns really nicely with my business to-dos, because as part of that week, I'm adjusting the way that I'm functioning outwardly and then also within my business. So that week I'm doing more admin stuff. So it's like behind the scenes. So I'm taking care of billing. I'm taking care of any sort of like paperwork that needs to happen. I'm reflecting on my month to see how did it go? Like, what revenue did I bring in? What am I projecting for the next month? That makes me feel so grounded when I know what's going on with my money. And so I'm really focusing in on those tasks that ground me and root me, so that the next week and the week after that and the week after that, I can soar. So I'm like grounding in, I'm reflecting a lot. I'm doing a lot of writing. So writing is how I process my emotions best and process my learnings. So what you're going to see from me, for example, on social media, is going to be much more written focused work and much less of that camera work, because I don't want to be on screen during that week when I'm trying to like protect my energy. So you'll see how I kind of switch up some of the social media stuff. And that's honestly what I recommend for people who are entering into social media, in the world of social media, to help them from getting burnt out. Because a lot of times when I'm onboarding new clients, and this is like the first time they're actually being intentional about their social media, I find that the first thing they do is they burn themselves out within the first month, because they're so excited and they're so gung-ho, but they're not used to being that outward facing. So that's something I found that works for myself, and I've found it works for other people, is to kind of create this schedule. And then during the other weeks, I'm kind of like creating one more piece of content. So every time I film a video, for example, I'm thinking, how can I film one more? So by the time I get to the end of the month, maybe I have 2 or 3 extra videos that can kind of get me through. And then I can supplement my written content with those videos, and no one knows. No one misses the fact that I'm in my reflection week.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing, like, eventually, of figuring things out enough to batch things. I do this too in terms of like things that require different energetic effort, right? Like there are certain tasks to me that are very head down tasks, like my accounting or I don't know. There's just like various things, admin tasks, right? Where I just like need to like focus in. Nobody talk to me. No one call me. Like all of that, right? Where I just need to be kind of like in the zone. I even have like a focus playlist for it. Like I have all of these things that I do, like a ritual that I do to even like get my brain ready to focus. Which is especially important for my ADHD brain for me to tell it like this is what we're doing right now, and we're not doing all the other things you want to be doing. Like ignore
Yes.
that. You're not
Time
doing that.
blocking. Oh man,
Yeah,
time block
yeah,
and protect it. Like earlier today, you
yeah.
were texting me some things that I really wanted to read, but I also wanted to be present for reading it. And so I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I had to just really like use my willpower. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not reading those texts right now because I want to be present for reading those texts. I'm
Mm-hmm.
answering the emails that I need to answer, and I'm doing that. And I'll come back to the text messages. So like that's another thing that I think is
Yeah.
very helpful that you just hit on there was time blocking and
Mhm.
respecting that time block.
Yeah, can we please normalize delayed responding to texts? I mean, I naturally do this and maybe to a fault at times, but I'm that way too of like, if I'm in something else, like I try my best to be fully present wherever I am, which again is, I don't know that I do it 100%. I know absolutely there are times that I'm not even close, but there is something to like, if I'm doing an activity, if I'm out and about, like walking with a friend or with my kids or something, and I have someone texting me, I'm kind of like, this is the moment that I start texting here, my brain and my heart is like connected to them and I'm almost somewhere else now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or I'm bridging like half my brain is there and half my brain is here. And that's first of all, for me at least, overstimulating a little too much. But then also my kids are talking to me and I'm like half hearing them because I'm also thinking about what I'm responding to. Right.
Well, yeah, and it's
So I'm
also
that way
kind of a
too.
safety thing too.
Not to mention driving while texting.
Driving
Like I
while
know
texting
a lot
all.
of us are guilty of it. I know I've done it, right? At like at a stoplight or whatever, like or caught myself reaching for my phone to text while I was driving and had to be like, "What are you doing, brain?
Mm-hmm.
Stop. You're driving. Watch the road." But that's such a I mean, I don't know. I think if people were honest about it, like I think that's a very common phenomenon. But yeah, I think there's things like that too, because even I have a friend group thread that Erin's in that I didn't respond to all weekend because I had family in town. I was doing a bunch of things, and I was like,
Girl, we
I'm gonna
know.
wait till Monday.
We
I know.
know.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, can we normalize this because the beauty is of our like group chats that we know that that's what's happening. If someone's silent, that they're just like honoring their energy, their time. They
Life is
always pop back in.
happening,
Yeah.
outside of the
Yeah.
text message thread.
Mhm. So yeah, I mean, I think there's things like that in terms of, yeah, I think some of this is just like a learning process to know like how your unique, kind of brain and temperament deals with some of this kind of stuff too. Like I know for me, it's really hard for me if I have days where my client sessions are interspersed. Like I'm likely not going to be able to do a focused task with like an hour if I have an hour in between two calls. I'm not going to do my accounting in those, hour. Like
No.
there's various things like maybe I could send an email, but even that, like it's really interesting because the energetic difference. It's hard for me, especially to toggle between the two. I could almost more easily get up and like clean the house since I work from home during that hour and then come back because that's still like this like up energy, right? It's really interesting. Or this like this beaming out energy that I'm in. Or maybe I could actually like record, like a reel or something because that's still this like if I'm feeling a high energy there, I almost have to do things that kind of stay in the same energy arc. And I think about that even as I'm scheduling clients, and looking at my days of where I'm putting them. And I think too, sometimes we want to defer. This is just speaking to service-based businesses in terms of scheduling. A lot of times we're like, whatever the client wants.
Yeah, you can't do that. If you want to bring your
Yeah.
actual good energy, and
Mm-hmm.
especially with what we do, a lot of times we're working with in people's businesses to help them craft whatever they want to do. So you can't be bringing that negative, low vibe energy into their business.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
irresponsible. So it's
Yeah.
extra important, especially for all you service providers out there, especially if you are working with people one on one, to for sure be protecting that energy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like to think about this too of like, even though, we want to give our clients the best experience possible, like for whatever reason, this was a huge people pleasing thing for me. back in the day was like whatever time someone said they wanted, they got it. Especially before I had kids. You want 7 p.m. on a Tuesday? Sure. No problem, right? Like, oh, I guess technically I'm free, so that's fine, right? Free, because I didn't have boundaries around that kind of stuff. But I do think like as you get like now I'm like almost overly specific, I guess, like in terms of the boundaries of when I want to meet with people. And it comes down to that of like, I want to give you my very best energy. Like I want me at my peak for you. But I think the thing is that like a lot of times, even people are like, well, I have a strong preference for this. Usually you can find a happy medium where they're like, well, I can't do it. Like usually you can find something that's mutually, okay, that works. Right. And to kind of like spend the time hashing that out,
Depends on
even if
what's
they
going
need to
on.
rearrange things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends
Yeah.
on what's going on. Like last week I had a lot of like SOS requests, like random things popping up that weren't scheduled. And I'm here to help people through those, and I want to help people through those moments. So I knew by doing that, then I need to then compensate with a really restorative weekend. And also
Yeah.
I was able to move some of my Monday appointments so then I could reclaim those 4 hours that were spent on Saturday. So that was so powerful. And I think also that's something that comes obviously easier when you own your own business, but it takes a while to give yourself that permission, because when you first start, it's like, I just am so happy to have clients and people calling me. I love that, and I don't want to say no to anyone. And also you're still in, at least for me, I was still in that mindset of like 9 to 5 is when I work, and it was difficult for me to transition into something that might be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more forgiving. So it's been a process to get to that point, but I'm really happy with where I am at this moment.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too, even in terms of like some of these figuring out what works the best for you. I think there's always some degree of like your ideal schedule, right? Or your ideal way of functioning versus how it actually is every week. And maybe we have some weeks where it does like match up to the ideal, but I think what's probably more realistic for most of us is that there are some weeks where like things pop up, right? Or, like, so I think we can't be overly perfectionistic even with our boundaries too, in terms of like our workflow. Because some of the stuff is like we're getting into, it's one thing to set boundaries with people who are like overstepping your boundaries. That's a whole other thing versus I'm optimizing, right? That's what we're talking about right now is like optimizing energy.
Yes.
So you're like already working with clients you want to work with, like all of that kind of stuff. That I think it's nice to at least know what you want and know what your ideal is so that that can inform your decisions. That being said, I know that there's sometimes too where it's just, okay, we're on a deadline and this is going, and so I'm going to break some of my own rules here and I'm thoughtfully doing it. I know I'm breaking the rule and I'm like, yeah, we're doing this. Or even sometimes I'll find myself working late at night and I'll ask myself like, why am I doing this? Sometimes I genuinely am like, I want to do this right now. I don't know. I feel like I want to make a TikTok chaotically at 10:30 at night. I know I should probably go to bed right now, but I'm just like, I'm in this energy. Why not? Right. So I think like having these moments of just like also just going with the flow.
Yeah, I think also being intentional. So the other thing is like, why are you like what you're just saying right now is like checking in with my energy and asking, why am I doing this thing that I'm doing? I think sometimes also it's with social media, it's like, well, I'm doing it because I want to bring in clients. But I would actually really push back on that to see, okay, well, how else are you also bringing in clients? Because that puts a lot of pressure on one thing that someone may or may not see depending on how busy their schedule is that day. So I think sometimes we can have these false perceptions in regard to the reasons why we're doing something. If you're creating that TikTok, that's great. What is it going to do for you? Number one, it's bringing you joy in the moment. So that's very powerful. It's probably going to give you energy to do something the next day that maybe you didn't have energy to do. And also you're going to post it, and maybe because you were in that great energy, you're going to get a great result back. But you're also not putting like all your hopes and dreams on that one TikTok to work.
Yeah.
And
Well, listen, I would
bring you all the clients. It's like, let's have a little bit of a frame of reference also for why we're doing things. And that also helps to manage the energy output and that keep it from being kind of that roller coaster of emotions of,
Mhm.
oh man, I put all my effort into filming that podcast and no one listened to it. So now I'm sad and I'm down here, instead of
Yeah.
keeping it more of at like a neutral state where it's like, I'm doing this podcast because I enjoyed it. I put out some energy today that I normally wouldn't put out because I wanted to have this great conversation. I can't wait to
Yeah.
share it. Hopefully someone listens to it and they enjoy it. Maybe if just one or two people listen to it and enjoy it, that's enough for me. And I'm just going to be happy with that and then see what I'll be open to possibility for it to be bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it's interesting because I think in my 20s, I definitely would like work really late just because I was like stressed out and I needed to get things done or felt pressure or whatever.
Same.
And it's interesting of like every so often with me, it's so funny as I like watch my spikes in energy. And honestly, now that I have a life where my life now is very different than it was 5 years ago, very different. And it's funny that sometimes I find myself with energy I don't know what to do with. And that's what I'm speaking to in terms of like every so often, like, and gosh, going to bed on time is like my Achilles heel. I'm forever trying to work on like getting, winding down. But it's funny that sometimes like I get some of my best ideas at night. And so I'm not necessarily like worrying or ruminating at night, or I'm not even thinking about how am I attracting my next client. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm like, ooh, I just thought of this thing that I have to share. And I'm afraid if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget. And then I know I'm going to lay here and keep thinking about it for the next 20 minutes. So I better just go like take 3 minutes to record it to get it out because I just have this like pressing need to share these things. So I think that's interesting too, depending on your creative process. Like I just sometimes get these like downloads that I feel like I either need to write down or speak aloud. I guess I don't have to. There's no consequence if I don't. But to me, that's the kind of stuff where I feel like the spark is sparking, right? It's like a very joyful process, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I've been I toggle back and forth between creating like these healthy habits of self-discipline and all of those things. But at a certain point, some of that stuff can feel really confining for my spirit type, where I'm like, I need like a healthy balance between structure and rules and then like even breaking some of my own rules in a healthy way, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing too. I think I've just been playing around with this concept of like perfection or even like consistency and habits and all these things. I'm like, my phenotype loves this interplay between spontaneity, a little bit of chaos. I actually love a little bit of chaotic energy
I like
in
to
a good way.
manufacture that in as your talent manager.
Yeah.
I
Like it's like
manufacture in moments of chaos for Allison because that's how she gets
yes.
her. I think we talked about that with Johnny Depp. I think were
Mhm.
you and I having this conversation? I can't remember, but I think you told me that on Pirates of the Caribbean, or even like when Johnny Depp works on movies, like half the time he's not even going on script. He's just going with his emotion in the moment and his like inspiration, which I think is really when we're having that connection to the divine is when we are fully in our creative process. It's one of the closest
Yeah.
ways we can get there. But I think you told me that that was like kind of part of his process. It might have been my husband. I don't know. I can't remember
I
who,
was
but
thinking it might have been him. Well, I know he's not the only one that does it, especially I know for things like comedians, things like, Anchorman or whatever, right? Like where every single take will be different because the whole thing is that they want it to be fresh and funny. And the thing with comedic timing is it's like cheeky. It's a little bit, and it's the element of surprise that makes things really funny. And you can even feel when their co-stars or whoever are like reacting genuinely because they're like shocked, right? And it's like that much funnier, the like reactions they're eliciting. So that is like, we're doing multiple takes. I'm going to give you 5 different ridiculous things and you don't know what's about to come out, right? And then you get to choose between the 5. But yeah, so there's something like that is it's creation energy, right? It's iterative. It's like, and honestly that's the way that I think about even at this point, I guess, from the creative side of like content creation. So like Erin is my marketing and social media advisor and gives you all these like really tangible tools, right? That I need to know, like frameworks to work within that are so helpful that are actually going to be successful. Like I need that. And then what I do from that framework is then like Now, how on my side of it do I make it fresh and fun and sustainable and in my style? So I'm not copying someone else. This is very authentic to me and what I want to do. And so like I get to a point, I think once I'm in the content creation, once I have like the framework, I actually let go of the outcome and I don't even think about who's going to like it. I mean, I might a little bit think of who am I speaking to,
Yeah.
like I'm talking to my best friend or something. I do kind of think in that term, but I'm not thinking like this is going to convert a client.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I should, but to me that feels like a weird energy versus I'd rather just be in this like playful healing. I would like to draw people in who kind of just resonate with me as a person, who are like, yeah, I want to do some healing work. Or I want to do some goal work with that person because it looks like it would be a joyful, beautiful, relieving experience. And that's really what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
I love that about you. I love that you kind of take it and then also adjust it to your own persona. I think that is honestly, that's like the golden ratio. So
mm-hmm.
I love that you do that. I think when we first started to work together, you were like kind of apologizing to me a little bit. You're like, Erin, I'm going off plan a little bit here. And I'm like sitting there cheering because I know that's when the magic is going to happen. It's like we'll have enough of that content that's going to keep people moving forward in that structure. But what's really going to connect with them are these moments of brilliance that only you can have, Allison. And everyone has that in them. Everyone has those moments of brilliance that they can harness and they should harness. So that's not just something that's unique to Allison. But I've noticed that we figured it out down to a science, kind of how much do you need? How much fuel should I give you? And then how much you feel very comfortable then coming to the table and just going with what you're feeling in the moment, what you're inspired and divinely sparked to do. So I'm really loving this kind of workflow that we got going on here.
Well, it's funny too, because like anyone who comes into either any of my groups or even one-on-one, I have like a very specific model that I work off of, and I'm not going to go too in depth into it, but that it gets really into the energetics of things, right? Of once you have your basic needs met and the structure that you need, right? Safety, security, enough of that kind of stuff to then really start to play a little bit. There's actually science that backs that when people are really vibing and this like peace, love, joy, and joy to me is like playfulness, creation, all of that kind of stuff, and maybe even a little enlightenment energy. That's where people have synchronicities and amazing luck, and all of a sudden that's like the manifestation energy, right? That's just very generative of like you are just beaming something out and like the universe or other people are picking up on it and then responding back to you, and it's like this boomerang of energy or like karma in real time. And so that's kind of the stuff, like I have a group called The Overflow where we're literally working on like raising this energetic kind of thing. And we kind of figure out like sometimes there are very specific things that actually are like a wall that keep us from it. So like maybe you're going through something heavy and you're really anxious or you're stuck on something, or, you know, you have a self-concept about yourself that's like really caging, and we kind of get into some of that kind of stuff to like remove it, you know, or set it aside so that you can feel like your energy can rise in this kind of a way. But yeah, there is, I think, something about that I think that's what we're kind of getting into. It actually makes me think of a conversation we had on the podcast several weeks ago, about, you know, you going to a ballet and you're like, there's the people who know the dance moves and technically they're doing them great. They are doing them. They're not missing their beats. They're not like, but they're just like mechanically a little bit like they're just hitting their marks. Versus there's some people in there that where you're like, they are dancing from their soul, like that it is just like woo, you know, the way that like they are dancing from their pinky toe at this point. Like it is just, and it's like such a different energy. And those are always the people too that like if there's a troupe of people dancing or whatever, a lot of times there's one person that draws your eye and you cannot take your eye off of them, and they can all do the same choreography. I cannot take my eyes off of this person. That's an energy.
Yeah.
Right. That's going like full out and they're beaming something, and there's an enjoyment to it. Like they look happy doing what they're doing and you are enjoying watching their enjoyment. Right. So I think, again, this is part of my philosophy of like, we can't bypass all the other stuff that's keeping us from joy. But for me, like the destination is always joy in all of this.
I love that
and
about
enjoyment
you.
of the process.
I love that about you. It's It makes it so fun to be able to learn from you, and definitely love the process of the overflow. And so that has changed my life in terms of the process that you teach in that class. And I really could not be my full self where I am now. And I know, like, without that class, and I know I'm just going to grow even more. So very excited for people to explore what you are teaching. I know that class starts on February 1st, so very soon. So kind of the last call here to sign up if you haven't done it yet. And then, yeah, I think that's all I have to say on this topic. I just hope everyone has a great week and leans into their creation potential and rests when they need to, and knows that that rest can be very productive as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Listen to your body, vibe out, have fun. Amen.
Amen.